Hi, this is Metzora, and I'm reading from the Amplified Bible, the portion called Metzora. The meaning is leper, and that is Leviticus 14 and 15. Then the Lord spoke to Moses, saying, This shall be the law of the leper on the day of his ceremonial cleansing. He shall be brought to the priest at the meeting place outside the camp. The priest shall go out of the camp to meet him, and the priest shall examine him. And if the leper has been healed of the infection of leprosy, then the priest shall give orders to take 2 live clean birds, and cedar wood and scarlet string and hyssop for the one to be cleansed. Next, the priest shall order that one of the birds be killed as a sacrifice in an earthenware container over fresh running water. As for the live bird, he shall take it together with the cedar wood and the scarlet string and the hyssop, and shall dip them and the live bird in the blood of the bird sacrificed over the running water. He shall sprinkle the blood 7 times on the one that to be cleansed from the leprosy, and shall pronounce him ceremonially clean. Then he shall let the live bird go free over the open field. The one to be cleansed shall wash his clothes, shave off all his hair, and bathe in water, and he shall be clean. After that he may come into the camp. Then he shall stay outside of his tent for 7 days. On the 7th day he shall shave off all his hair. He shall shave his head and his beard and his eyebrows, even all his hair on his body. Then he shall wash his clothes and bathe his body in water to be clean. Now on the 8th day he shall take 2 male lambs without blemish, and a yearly ewe lamb without blemish, and 3/10 of an ephah of fine flour with olive oil as a grain offering, and 1 log, about a pint, of oil. And the priest who cleanses him shall present the man to be cleansed, and his offerings before the Lord at the doorway of the tent of meeting. Then the priest shall take 1 of the male lambs and for a guilt offering with the log of oil, and present them as a wave offering before the Lord. He shall kill the male lamb in the place where they killed the sin offering and the burnt offering, and the sacred place, the courtyard of the tabernacle, for the guilt offering. Like the sin offering belongs to the priest, it is most holy. The priest shall take some of the blood of the guilt offering and put it on the lobe of the right ear of the one to be cleansed, on the thumb of his right hand, and on the big toe of his right foot. The priest shall also take some of the log of oil and pour it into the palm of his own left hand. And the priest shall dip his right finger in the oil that is on his left palm, and with the finger sprinkle some of the oil 7 times before the Lord. Of the rest of the oil which is in his palm, the priest shall put some of the oil in the lobe of the right ear of the one to be cleansed, and the thumb of his right hand, and on the big toe of his right foot, on top of the blood of the guilt offering. The remaining oil that is in the priest's palm shall be put on the head of the one to be cleansed. The priest shall make atonement for him before the Lord. Then the priest shall offer the sin offering and make atonement for the one to be cleansed from his uncleanness, and afterward kill the burnt offering. The priest shall offer the burnt offering and the grain offering on the altar, and the priest shall make atonement for him, and he shall be clean. But if the cleansed leper is poor and his means are insufficient, then he is to take 1 lamb as a guilt offering to be waved to make atonement for him, and 1/10 of an ephah of fine flour mixed with oil as the grain offering, and a log of oil. the two turtle doves and the two young pigeons, such as he can afford. One shall be for the sin offering, and the other one for the burnt offering. He shall bring them on the 8th day for his ceremonial cleansing to the priest at the door of the tent of meeting before the Lord. The priest shall take the lamb of the guilt offering and the log of oil, and shall present them as a wave offering before the Lord. Then he shall kill the lamb of the guilt offering, and the priest is to take some of the blood of the guilt offering and put it on the lobe of the right ear of the one to be cleansed, and on the thumb of the right hand, and on the big toe of his right foot. The priest shall pour some of the oil into his left palm, and with his right finger the priest shall sprinkle some of the oil that is in his left palm 7 times before the Lord. The priest shall put some of the oil in his palm and the lobe of the right ear of the person to be cleansed, and on the thumb of his right hand, and on the big toe of his right foot, on the places where he has put the blood of the guilt offering. The rest of the oil that is in the priest's palm shall be put on the head of the one to be cleansed, to make atonement for him before the Lord. Then he shall offer one of the turtle doves or young pigeons, which are within his means. He shall offer what he can afford, one as a sin offering and the other as a burnt offering, together with the grain offering. The priest shall make atonement before the Lord on behalf of the one to be cleansed. This is the law for the one in whom there is an infection of leprosy, whose means are limited for his ceremonial cleansing. The Lord spoke to Moses and Aaron, saying, When you come into the land of Canaan, which I am giving to you as a possession, and I put a mark of leprosy on a house in your land, then the one who owns the house shall come and tell the priest, I have seen something that looks like a mark of leprosy in my house. The priest shall order that they empty the house before he goes in to examine the mark, so that everything in the house will not have to be declared unclean. Afterward he shall go in to see the house. He shall examine the mark, and if the mark on the walls of the house have greenish or reddish depressions and appear deeper than the surface, the priest shall go out of the house to the doorway and quarantine the house for 7 days. The priest shall return on the 7th day and look, and if the mark has spread on the walls of the house, he shall order them to tear out the contaminated stones and throw them into an unclean place outside the city. He shall have the entire inside area of the house scraped, and the plaster that is scraped off shall be dumped in an unclean place outside the city. Then they shall take new stones and replace the contaminated stones, and he shall take plaster and replaster the house. If, however, the mark breaks out again in the house after he has removed the stones and has scraped and replastered the house, then the priest shall come and look again, and if the mark has spread in the house, it is a malignant leprosy in the house. It is ceremonially unclean. He shall tear down the house, its stones and its timber, and all of the plaster of the house, and shall take everything outside the city to an unclean place. Moreover, whoever goes into the house during the time that it is quarantined becomes unclean until evening, and whoever lies down in the house to rest shall wash his clothes, and whoever eats in the house shall wash his clothes. But if the priest comes in and inspects it, and the mark has not spread in the house after the house has been replastered, he shall pronounce the house clean, because the mark has not reappeared. To cleanse the house, then, he shall take 2 birds and cedar wood and scarlet string and hyssop. And he shall kill one of the birds in an earthenware container over running water, and he shall take the cedar wood and the hyssop and the scarlet string and the living bird, and dip them in the blood of the slain bird, as well as the running water, and sprinkle the house 7 times. So he shall cleanse the house with the blood of the bird and with the running water, along with the live bird and the cedar wood and the hyssop and the scarlet string. But he shall let the live bird go free outside the city into the open field. So he shall make atonement for the house, and it will be clean. This is the law for the mark of leprosy, even for a scale, and for the leprous garment or house, and for a swelling, and for a scab, and for a bright spot on the skin, to teach when they are unclean and when they are clean. This is the law of leprosy in regard to both persons and property. Chapter 15. The Lord spoke to Moses and Aaron, saying, Speak to the children of Israel, and say to them, When any man has a bodily discharge, his discharge is unclean. This shall be the law concerning his uncleanness in his discharge, whether his body allows its discharge to flow or obstructs its flow, it is uncleanness in him. Every bed on which the one who has the discharge lies becomes unclean, and everything on which he sits becomes unclean. Whoever touches his bed shall wash his clothes and bathe in water, and be unclean until evening. And whoever sits on anything on which the man with the discharge has been sitting shall be wash his clothes and bathe in water, and be unclean until evening. Also, whoever touches the man with the discharge shall wash his clothes and bathe in water, and be unclean until evening. And if he who has the discharge spits on one who is clean, then he shall wash his clothes and bathe in water, and be unclean until evening. Any saddle on which the man with the discharge rides becomes unclean. Whoever touches anything that has been under him shall be unclean until evening, and whoever carries those things shall wash his clothes and bathe in water, and be unclean until evening. Whoever the one with the discharge touches without rinsing his hands in water shall wash his clothes and bathe in water, and be unclean until evening. An earthenware container that the one with the discharge touches shall be broken, and every wooden container shall be rinsed in water. When the man with the discharge becomes cleansed from his discharge, he shall count off 7 days for his purification. He shall then wash his clothes and bathe his body in running water, and will become clean. On the 8th day he shall take 2 turtle doves or 2 young pigeons, and come before the Lord to the doorway of the tent of meeting, and give them to the priest. And the priest shall offer them, one as a sin offering and one as a burnt offering. So the priest shall make atonement for the man before the Lord because of his discharge. Now, if any man has a seminal emission, he shall wash all his body in water, and be unclean until evening. Every garment and every leather on which there is semen shall be washed with water, and shall be unclean until evening. If a man lies with a woman so that there is a seminal emission, they shall both bathe in water and be unclean until evening. When a woman has a discharge, if her bodily discharge is blood, she shall continue in her menstrual impurity for 7 days. and whoever touches her shall be unclean until evening. Everything on which she lies during her menstrual impurity shall be unclean, and everything on which she sits shall be unclean. Anyone who touches her bed shall wash his clothes and bathe in water and be unclean until evening. Whoever touches anything on which she sits shall wash his clothes and bathe in water and be unclean until evening. And if it is on her bed or on the thing on which she is sitting, when he touches it, he shall be unclean until evening. If a man actually lies with her, so that her menstrual impurity is on him, he shall be unclean for 7 days, and every bed on which he lies shall be unclean. Now, if a woman has a flow of blood for many days, not during the time of her menstruation, or if she has a discharge beyond that period, as long as the impure discharge continues, she shall be as she is in the days of her normal menstrual impurity. She is unclean. Every bed on which she lies during the time of her discharge shall be to her like the bed of her menstrual impurity, and whatever she sits on shall be unclean, like the uncleanness of her monthly period. And whoever touches those things shall be unclean, and shall wash his clothes and bathe in water, and be unclean until evening. When she is cleansed from her discharge, then she shall count off for herself 7 days, and after that she will be clean. Then on the 8th day she shall take for herself 2 turtle doves and 2 young pigeons, and bring them to the priest at the doorway of the tent of meeting. And the priest shall offer one as a sin offering and the other as a burnt offering, and he shall make atonement for her before the Lord for her unclean discharge. Thus you shall separate the Israelites from their uncleanness, so that they do not die in their uncleanness by their defiling my tabernacle that is among them. This is the law for the one who has a discharge and for the one who has a seminal emission, so that he is unclean by it. And for the woman who is ill because of her monthly period, and for the one who has a discharge, whether a man or a woman, or for a man who lies with a woman who is ceremonially unclean.